Hey Zwifters, and welcome to another episode of the Zwiftcast. I'm joined again by my companion de route, Nathan Guerra. Yo, dude.
Hey, how's it going?
And the llama himself, Shane Miller. G'day, mate.
And g'day, Simon. How's things?
Good with me, thank you. Nathan, I logged in last night to listen to the Voice of Zwift and watch some coverage of the Team Time Trial KISS race. And you were on a new service called Beam Pro. What's happening?
So we're just trying out some new things. Beam seems to be kind of one of the next new things, and we are not off of Twitch, we're not off of YouTube, we are streaming to wherever people want to find us. I want to make sure that those who want access to the stream where we've been, which is YouTube and Twitch, can have access to us live there, but we're pushing some of the audience as much as we can over to Beam to see how things go there.
Great to hear that we can find the Voice of Zwift in more places. And more places was where you were last week, Shane, because you were up in the hot north of Australia in Cairns, and I saw you doing one of your KOM challenge events. What are those?
Yeah, we've done it all over the shop. I create a little video on my YouTube channel about every event we do. They're corporate nights, they're bike shops, they're charity nights, anything that's, I guess, related to cycling, and it just livens the event up. So we set people up the Watopia Wall KOM, which is only a short effort. We have flat pedals, so we just make it a bit of fun. And we use the gamification side rather than the simulation side. So everyone's set to about 70 kilos, but it's just a great night to jump on and try a smart trainer for the first time.
Is beer involved, Shane?
Absolutely. It's Australia.
I thought it might be. Okay, well, let's get on to the first thing we're going to talk about, which I think we have to talk again about trainers, because the trainer world just seems to be exploding with new models. Let's take a look first at the one that seems to be attracting the most attention, which is from Tacx, and it's called the Magnum, and it is essentially a treadmill that you put a bike on, and lots of people have had lots of things to say about it, and the most prevalent thoughts about it seem to be that it looks terribly unsafe.
We know that people ride rollers already with about that much space, and so I'm not sure about that. I've seen plenty of top professional riders using something that's extremely similar to this, that does different elevation changes and actually seems to be the preferred model that they would use when they are indoors training. I mean, I've seen Team Sky on this, GCN obviously in their videos are using something similar to this with an indoor treadmill. So I think that they're trying to replicate that inside scientific environment with something that's similar to those things. And this will actually create, it looks like to me, more of a real world feel than you could get even on a rollers. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is going to be that unsafe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that a company of the standing of Tacx, Shane, would even consider marketing anything that could give rise to accidents and liability claims in this litigious world that we now live in. I mean, I think the bigger barrier to it is price.
Yeah, for sure. Look, those are up at around 7,000 euros, I believe. No go. They're simply not going to be out there. They're a bit of a show pony, I guess, or a show product to see what future think is around the hardware. But getting the general population on one of those and your general B graders, your C graders, your D graders, it's not going to happen. These things are too expensive. They're too clumsy. There's too many moving parts, and I think they're just not going to work. You're not going to be able to get a good FTP workout unless you're a highly skilled rider. So I think there's just going to be too many barriers for these. They're interesting to look at. I'd love to have a try on one myself, but I'm a no-go for these.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there, Shane. I think this is like, when designers send crazy outfits down the catwalk. I mean, nobody is ever going to wear them, but it gets the designers talked about and gets ridiculous photographs in newspapers and on websites. I think there's, like you say, a big element of show pony about that. But nonetheless, interesting. I think we'll just keep an eye on that one and see where it goes. Now, the Elite, who've come in for a bit of stick on the accuracy of their trainers, have announced a whole new range. Top of the range is the Drivo, I'm guessing, which is boasting some incredible accuracy figures. Do you think this is Elite kind of tacitly admitting that they need to give their trainer range a shot in the arm?
I had a look into the Drivo. Their first 30-second promo of the actual unit itself had 3 seconds of the trainer. in the video. I watched it a few times and I'm like, hang on, where's the information here? I hope for their sake that it is that accurate and it is a good ride. But when the promo has 27 seconds of not the trainer, I'm going to be a little skeptical.
Yeah. Nathan, your local trainer manufacturer in Wisconsin, they've announced the Magnus. I think that's aimed more at the kind of Vortex market.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a pretty solid unit. They needed to respond somehow, and having already the power beam just a little bit above that, and then looks like they're recreating that with just a little less of the bells and whistles to it, I think essentially is what you're going to get out of that trainer is what it's looking like, and just able to kind of hit a price point that's just competitive enough with the kicker, I think, too, that they will grab a few users out there for sure in that price range.
I mean, it's incredibly active, this market, Shane, isn't it? I mean, I know it's the time of year you get these announcements. We've got Eurobike coming up. Do you think all this smart trainer activity is completely inspired by Zwift?
I think it has to be. The way we use smart trainers nowadays is completely different now Zwift has come along. As I may have mentioned in the past, I was going to sell my kicker before Zwift came along. I just wasn't into the way it sort of set your watts, that's what you do, and that's all you do. And it was very digital, I guess. Whereas nowadays, the way people use it, the market is just massive. We're getting people, 45-year-old women and above, a market that was never, ever there for smart trainers. They're buying kickers now or buying smart trainers, which is fantastic to see. So I think the market has greatly expanded because of Zwift.
I'm sure the manufacturers have just realised how potentially large this market is, how broad a base the Zwift community could be, and how many trainers they can sell. I mean, I think it's as simple as that, really. And talking about broadening the base of Zwift, Nathan, after fairly broad hints by Eric Min, it looks pretty certain to me that an iPad version is coming out, and probably very soon, maybe even by the time this podcast is published. How big is that going to be for Zwift?
I think it's going to open up for a lot of people as long as they understand that they can, the technology behind it, and it's very easily walked through for them how to hook it up and everything. But I mean, putting it right there on your phone, I think that is going to break down some of those barriers. I think that the understanding of how to set it all up has been, for some people like, hey, can you come help me out with this? I get that so often. And so there's a little tech to it. But at the same time, now that you can just put it on your phone and push go, or put it on your iPad and push go, that's going to be a huge game changer, I think, for that barrier for some people.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. It just removes that understanding barrier, that barrier that you see all the time where people say, I'm no computer buff, can you help me out? Do you agree, Shane? Do you think this could double the user base, triple it? I mean, do you think it could be that big?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a game changer with no question at all. What the events that I do, we cut around a computer, a wireless keyboard, an ant stick, the big screens, the tripods, you name it. With this, if we could just rock up with 2 iPads, I mean, we could still take big screens to do some air sharing, but it's just going to be fantastic. And to think further on that, places like spin studios, that I was at one here in Sydney yesterday, if you could just bring in, if say everyone brought in their iPads, they could all race each other. And on the big screen, you could have someone like Nathan calling the commentary. Yeah. So it's a game changer entirely. So it's going to break down some barriers. One thing I will predict, and anybody listening who's an Android user, I will just say, just wait, see what they do at the Android level, because this will be the iPad version or the iOS version first, and there's going to be a bit of a us versus them war with that. But as an iPhone user, bring it on.
Yeah. Do you think the graphics will be compromised by the need to run on iOS? Although, I mean, there's a lot of kind of balls under the bonnet on the iPad Pro for sure, isn't there?
Look, what you can do, it's known hardware as well. I guess the difficulty you have with something that needs to be compatible across many different platforms on like a PC base, I guess you call it. You've got different drivers levels, different different OS versions and things like that, which is a bit of a struggle and really, really taxes the support team. If you go on the iOS system, it's a known hardware platform. Most people are up to date with iOS, and it forces you to update, which is a good thing from a security perspective as well. I think it's going to be quite good, and the power of those devices is quite amazing these days.
It is going to be really, really interesting to see what a difference that makes to the user base, and like you two, I predict that it's just going to remove so many barriers to entry, and make the whole interface with the computer so much easier to understand. Coming up on the Zwiftcast, Aussie hero Mat Hayman tells us what he's been up to since the legendary Paris Roubaix win, and how Zwift is fitting into his training plan for the rest of the season. And stay tuned for the results of a fascinating experiment. One Zwifter returned to riding in real life on a tricky local climb after 2 years doing nothing but riding indoors. Was he faster? Find out later. Next, though, let's talk about Married Zwifting. Both Shane and Nathan have partners who share the pain cave, and there are lots and lots of couples who Zwift. I caught up with one set of Married Zwifters. Welcome to the Zwiftcast to Lisa and Jeff Van Dusen, one of a number of happily married Zwifting couples. Now, I say happily, but is it? I'm thinking that might come down to whether you are a 1 or a 2 trainer household. Which is it, Lisa?
2.
It's a 2 trainer household. I imagine that makes things significantly easier.
It definitely does, yes.
Have you always had a dual setup, or was there a time when you had to share a trainer?
We started with just one to see if we would like the program, and we both used the trainers in equal amount, and then we decided we would get 2, which happened to work out for the best.
And Jeff, when you had one trainer, were there any marital disputes or words of disharmony about who got trainer time?
Well, I'm absolutely obsessed with it, so I didn't want to get off of it. And on top of that, I had to switch her cassette because she had an 11-speed cassette versus my 10-speed cassette. So it just became too much. So we decided, hey, we're riding it so much that it's worth having 2 Wahoo kickers, actually.
When we only had the one, I just had the girls, so I wasn't really on the trainer a whole lot. So it worked out pretty well at that time.
And you mentioned the girls there, and that's 22-month-old twins. I don't think it requires much imagination to realise how much work that is, and presumably that's why Zwift works so well for you.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, they'll sleep till about 7:30 every day, so we're down there at 4:30 riding, and then once in a while we can sneak in down there when they're napping. So we have ample opportunities because they love to sleep. So
well, that does sound like good news. You both compete in real life, Ironman triathletes.
Yep.
Yes.
That takes a lot of training.
Yes, it does.
It started before the kids, but now we're trying to keep it going while we have the kids, which is even more challenging.
Yes, we haven't done a full Ironman since the girls, but we've done a couple halves. I would say I'm more average, but Jeff is pretty fast. He just qualified for the World Championship, so. Yeah,
for the 70.3 World Championship in Tennessee in 2017, I just qualified for that, which typically requires you to be in the top, 3 to 5 of your age group.
And do you get to do much riding outside in real life?
Honestly, we don't get in as much outdoor riding as we used to. Maybe 1 or 2 rides a week, and then we sort of supplement 1 or 2 additional rides on the trainer. And then in the winter, it's, we have 7 or 8 months of bad weather, so we're all trainer all the time in those 7-8 months.
Yeah, we live in Michigan, so we don't get that nice of weather for very long.
Yeah, well, I live in the UK. I know exactly how you feel.
Probably close to the same.
Zwift must have been an absolute godsend to you. Did you jump on it very quick?
Absolutely. In fact, I not only did I get on it, but we have a local Zwift group. It's called the Tri-City Zwifters. It's a Facebook group. And I've encouraged maybe 10 or 15 others to get on it. And they've basically started with the basic experience. And I've got most guys up to the premium experience on the smart trainers. And I can't speak enough about how great it is. And I've encouraged all my friends. And I have not found one single person who had a bad thing to say about it. So,
and particularly for people in your position, I mean, presumably you've got jobs and you've got two twins under the age of 2, and the weather's not so great. I mean, it kind of makes you wonder what you did without it, I would think.
It does.
Absolutely. I work a lot harder on the trainer than I do outside, so I don't know why I didn't go to something like this earlier. I mean, I was actually part of the original beta test from the beginning of it, but I wish they would have had something like this out 5 years ago. It would have I would have probably been better on the bike than I am now.
Yeah. It definitely makes indoor training a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
And fun.
And fun.
And do you always ride together at the same time?
Not always, no. I work long days in the summertime, so he's usually down there in the morning on his own, and sometimes after work I might be down there once the girls are in bed.
Yeah, so I'll be down there at 4 a.m. I'll have the baby monitor sitting next to the bike. You know, we have three plasmas mounted on the wall, one for her bike trainer, one for my bike trainer, and then we have one to watch sports and triathlons and bike racing and things like that on. So
that sounds like one hell of a pain cave.
It's a great pain
nice.
cave.
Now, when you do Zwift together, do you ever kind of glance across at your sweaty, exhausted partner and think, am I really married to that person?
No, I think we look at each other's screens more to make sure you're keeping up with your wattage that you're supposed to, rather than looking at each other.
Have you any tips to pass on to similarly active couples?
Yeah, one of the things I would encourage, I mean, especially on this setup, I always tell all my friends is like, you know, most people have everything they need for the basic setup. You know, you pay that $10 a month, you get into the basic setup, and then you just become obsessed with it. And I can't imagine anyone not wanting to upgrade and spend $1,000 on the smart trainer. And then you created a situation where, you know, like for us, you can't put it down. So I think it's great, you know, for your well-being, but also for time management as well.
Yeah. I think also, and again, this must be particularly pertinent in your position. One of the things that I say to my buddies who kind of ask me about it is, you know, if you've possibly got the space to have a setup that is permanent and all you need to do is put your bib shorts on, put your shoes on and jump on the trainer, it just makes it so much easier to get those sessions in.
Yeah, I mean, you're saving probably 30 to 40 minutes a ride with setup and get your bike out and, you know, all the things that you know, driving to where you're going to bike or whatever. I mean, every ride you're saving 30 minutes at least. So from a time management perspective, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well done, you two. I'm sure there are kind of loads and loads of husband and wife Zwifters all over the world.
Absolutely, there should be more if there's not.
Yeah, and thank you very much indeed for talking to the Zwiftcast. So both you guys are part of Married Couples Who Zwift, or Couples Who Zwift. Shane, how'd you get on with it? I mean, like I said in that interview, I think the key is probably having two trainers rather than one to make it successful.
Yeah, look, we've actually had to buy two kickers because I'm still on 10 speed. I'm moving to 11 soon, but Veronica's on 11 speed, so we had to buy another kicker. So we've already got two, and they're set up side by side. And as the custodian of the Zwift promo gear for their Australian events, so every time they come back every year, I'm the holder of that. We've set that up just sneakily in the trainer room, so we can Zwift side by side with the big screens, and it's fantastic. We can both do the same workout or different workouts. We've even been known to do hill repeats together, and then I'll turn around and ride back down and meet Von up the hill. So it's just like how we ride outside. It's fantastic.
And it's a slightly different matter for you, Nathan, I think, because you and Lindsay have to have kind of different timetables because of your domestic responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the 5 kiddos, so with kids between the age of 2 and 12, it's awesome. During the day here, we're really, really busy, and so we've essentially set up times that she rides in the morning, I ride in the evening, and that's usually how it goes. Or I ride during the day, obviously, during my live streams that you guys join in with out there. So, yeah, we just, and we keep it simple. We keep it real simple. We actually use the same bike.
Yeah. And I'm really pleased to say that Lindsay can join us now. Hi, Lindsay.
Hello.
Do you ever Zwift at the same time as Nathan?
No.
You always do it separately, and I think that's because of your pretty complex household arrangements, isn't it?
Yeah, and we have 5 little people around here, so that makes it almost impossible.
Yeah. And actually, I imagine a lot of married couples who Zwift do actually end up doing it separately.
I think with the children thing involved, for sure, I would think so. I also think the expense of extra trainers.
Yeah. And Lindsay, has he ever commentated on you Zwifting?
Yeah, we did that once a couple weeks ago. I did a Kiss race, and Nathan broadcasted it and was commentating on the race.
How was that race for you?
That was super. That was a fun experience. I mean, the race was really hard. I think I actually told him to shut up once or twice.
Yeah, there was at least 1 or 2. Actually, there's a lot of looks, and then once or twice vocally, just shut up.
And would you recommend Married Zwifting, as we shall now call it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Anytime you have both people involved in something that you can get excited about, that it's great for your life and your marriage. And yeah.
It must be great to be able to share the same equipment and share the same setup and, also be happy that the kids are getting the time and the attention that they need.
There's also the challenges to it, though, too. Wear the headphones, I think, is a common, saying around here. Wear the headphones. Who left that coffee cup upstairs? I think your office is a mess and I have to ride in it.
Yeah.
So who's the
He
worst?
messes up the area that we ride. I clean it up. I get irritated that he messes it up. He gets irritated when I clean it up and I put things away and he can't find them. And we actually just share a bike instead of because we both ride almost every day. Instead of swapping a bike out, we just move the seat around. So I lower the seat and, change the angle. Sometimes I change the seat. He has to put his seat back on.
Stripped, and I'm not, Lindsay, what did you do? It's like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. I need to ride.
That sounds like some pretty classic domestic stereotyping being played out in the pain cave there.
Yeah, that's a new word. That's a whole new definition of the pain cave.
Yeah.
Lindsay, it's fantastic to hear from you. Make sure that he leaves that pain cave tidy next time you're in it.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
So I'm delighted now to have been joined by Von, Shane's other half, better half, I'm absolutely certain. Von, what's he like to Zwift with?
It's a good question. We did not Zwift together for a good period of time initially because we had to get our setups all organised. But when we Zwift side by side.
And what's that like? I mean, competitive, I'm guessing.
Definitely. I mean, we're in two separate leagues entirely. I mean, Shane's Palmares, he's raced at national level for a long time. And even though I've done some racing, I'm nowhere near at that same level of fitness. So, yeah, we take our own challenges and make up our own rides of what we want to do together as well. So we have done 100 kilometres together on the road on Zwift. And that was a very interesting day out. Day in.
In what way interesting?
Well, it was... Normally when you're out on the road, it's very difficult to hear what you're saying to the other person. You need to shout across wind and everything that's going on, the traffic going around you. But when you're side by side and you're saying, okay, stay on the wheel, I've got another hill coming, and, you can encourage each other along and be able to work really well with the pacing as well. So it was the first time I've done such a long trainer session indoors. I've never, gone for more than probably 2 hours on the trainer. For that one, for me, it was 3.5 hours. So, it was a long session, but good, really good. So it was great to have that encouragement and that company.
And would you recommend Zwifting as a couple?
Yes. There's definitely, if you can do the setup, that's one of the biggest things. Often you have to share the training space with your partner, so you might have to swap on and off the one indoor trainer. That's something that's difficult, but I guess if you're also apart, so I do a lot of traveling for work, so if you had a different setup somewhere else, you could ride with your partner across the other side of the country in our case.
Yeah. And finally, does he keep the pain cave tidy?
Yes, he does, but there's always...
No, the hesitation was too long there, Von. The hesitation was too long. I think you're just defending his good name.
Yeah, well, he's got so many trainers to choose from. So one day he's on the Neo, next day he's on the Kicker, then he's trying something different with the Le Monde. There's always something going on in that room, so I have to kind of work around him. But I love to keep a bike on the trainer. That's one thing that's handy for me because I've got such a busy schedule. To be able to have something fixed set up that I can jump on, jump off at odd times. That's the thing for me to get my workouts done.
Yeah, great, excellent. Really nice to meet you. Really nice to hear from you. And thank you very much for talking to us about Shane's habits in the pain cave.
No worries. If you need an update on the Zwift Academy, you can catch up with me on that too.
Excellent. Thanks, Von. Okay, well, I think still the one of the biggest rides, and probably the biggest ride on Zwift, is HDR. I think it's still king of the hill, and a couple of weeks ago, Mat Hayman showed up on it, which caused all kinds of excitement, and we're going to be talking to Mat Hayman in just 1 second. But before I play that interview, Shane, will you talk to me about bacon? What is this whole bacon thing on the HDR ride and with the Zwift Oz group? And I think the whole bacon thing is spreading kind of globally, really. So let's get to the bottom of this one, can we?
Oh, look, the HDR ride, it's always a barrel of laughs. We have what's called the raining thumbs. When the pace is down a little bit and we're all sort of warmed up and just sort of ticking away, they'll start raining. It'll be the call for raining of thumbs. And then there's always a call to stick to the beacon, stick back to the beacon, whoever has the beacon, which is usually Tim. And sometimes that comes out or is auto-corrected as the bacon. So stick to the bacon, come back to the bacon, and that theme just took off.
So it's an auto-correct thing.
I believe that's what's happening, and as people type, you sometimes you're huffing and puffing, and your heart rate's high. It'll come out as bacon.
Yeah.
So that became the theme of stick to the bacon. I think last week the theme was about thumb jokes and thumbs up, and there was movie titles with thumbs in them that people. So not only are we getting a ride in, we're all having a ball. It's an absolute laugh. But yeah, that's where the bacon comes from. Stick to the bacon, and yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you cleared that one up for us, Shane. It'll be really interesting to see whether bacon becomes the kind of jokey name for beacon as group rides develop over the northern hemisphere winter.
It's the new Ohio.
It could be the new Ohio, yeah. It could well be. But the HDR ride was graced by the presence of Mat Hayman. He showed up, and as I say, to much excitement, and people were so pleased to ride with him because he is a bit of a genuine hero. So I thought it was long after time that we should catch up with Matt on the Zwiftcast. So I managed to do so at his home in Belgium, and here's what he said. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
People are really interested in what pro riders get up to. So why don't we start by just you telling us, where are you now and what have you been doing today?
I'm at my kitchen bench. I've just got back from probably about 4 hours of training.
Just talk us through that. What kind of effort level was that? Did you do any intervals?
No, this was, so just trying to get back into it. My coach, he wanted me to keep kind of a low intensity, but he did give me some brackets for my heart rate. So probably about above 120 to 115 to 135 heart rate. And that might seem quite low, but, I had about 250 watt average for 4 hours. And so anybody who uses power, which you do now with Zwift quite a lot, so yeah, it was just a general endurance ride.
But
still a bit of pressure on the pedals, so not just a recovery day. So
250 watts for 4 hours, to people like me, for instance. I mean, that's a big ride. But for you, that's what, a mild to average ride.
Yeah, it's get back into it. I mean, anything above. When I'm riding, anything above 300 or 350 requires a bit of concentration, and that's a proper effort. But anything under that, and there's just making that difference between recovery and that first training zone, which I think sometimes, which is good. Kevin Poulton, my coach from Australia, and I think it's one of the areas that sometimes get missed. I think in recent years, with the introduction of all the trainings becoming a lot more scientific, and definitely something when I was at Sky that we moved into was doing a lot more of that sub-threshold work, which is anything up to, say, 5 watts per kilo. So for me, about 80 kilos, it's up to 400 watts. We were training a lot more in that area.
Where are you based in the race season?
I live in Belgium with my wife. She's Australian, and I've got one boy who's in the background here trying to be very, very quiet. And so he's a five-year-old son and my Australian wife, and we've been living in Belgium. I've lived here all of my racing career, which is coming up to 18 years of pro racing. I race the classics, and I love the Belgium and style of racing, and that's kind of my bread and butter, and it just made sense to live in this area.
Yeah, and it must be great to be able to have your family with you, because I know pro riders, they spend so much time away from home.
Yeah, look, this is our home now. As much as I'm Australian and I love going back there, it ends up being a long trip when we get out there around Christmas time, and we long to come back here because this is where we've set up.
Matt, how has your life changed since Paris Roubaix?
It has and it hasn't. I mean, I realised a couple of days straight after that actually nothing has changed. You're still exactly the same person, and I do a lot more selfies these days. There's a lot of looking into people's mobile phones and a photo with them, which is nice to be recognised every now and again around the traps. Strange too at sometimes when you think, well, I've been doing this for a long time, and last year I was here too, and nobody really cared, but now it's more of a deal. It's kind of validated a lot of the time that I've spent training, a lot of the sacrifices that I've made through my whole career. And look, I was happy with my career. I always have been. I've been happy riding for other people, and I've been happy targeting the classics and getting some success there. Using some of those races, whether it was, I've had some fourths and thirds and some top tens, a lot of top tens in the classics in the years. But look, it was just a dream come true, and to have everything go right on that day, to have no mechanical problems, and coming off the injury that I had and the build-up that I had and the far from ideal preparation, which turned out to maybe be the most ideal preparation. Who really knows what caused what, but I had the ride of my life and the day of my life.
Sure. Do you get more respect in the peloton when you win a monument?
I think I was actually racing in Yorkshire not long after, and one of the guys on my team said, well, you're just going right up the front and you've won Roubaix, so you just ride where you want and then we'll follow you. There's always been a bit of a hierarchy in the peloton, and there always is a bit of, and maybe I have. I did feel like this year at the Tour that I guess straight after I thought maybe it'll put more pressure on me as a rider, that I'll, now I've won that, I'll be expected to be good all the time. But quite the opposite. I've actually been able to relax a little bit this year at the Tour, when I was dropped in the mountains or something, and people recognise you, especially in France. I was like, just enjoy it. Don't worry about riding up the mountain and this and that. And I was just really taking it all in, and that's been really nice.
Yeah. I was going to say I can imagine that. I can't imagine that, but I know what you're talking about. What's your plan for the rest of the season now?
Yeah, look, I'm back onto kind of the one-day program. So I'll be heading off to Hamburg. It's a classic, a punchy classic, short climb in it, then followed on by Plouay, big race in France. And then over to Canada for Quebec and Montreal. And after that it won't be that far, a couple of weeks until the World Championships. Hopefully I'm selected to go there to Qatar.
Sure. But clearly people who listen to this podcast are very interested in your use of Zwift. Are you using it much now? I guess you're not really. I mean, presumably it's either a rehab or a winter tool for you.
I like to get on there every now and again. There's been a few times here that I've looked outside and I've got no one to ride with, and I'm probably a bit of a social rider as much as anybody, and I've thought, or I'm leaving for a race, and instead of getting out on the road early, I might just jump on there. So I think it's really time effective, and so it's just, and it's always like there's people there to ride with, and you feel like you are part of a group, or there are people around. There's something to look at. There's something to do. Where I probably wouldn't have jumped on the home trainer like that before, and I would have been one of the people that say, look, I much prefer to head out in the rain than to sit on a home trainer these days. If I had something specific and the weather was looking a little bit dodgy, or like I said, I was packing for a race and I thought, quick, I'll do 45 minutes. I probably wouldn't do 45 minutes on the road. I'd probably, you know, minimum I'd kit up and actually head out for would be probably an hour and a half. So sometimes, I have still been using it like that, and I get a few thumbs up. You know, it's good for my ego if I jump off.
I bet you do.
You know, just knowing that people around and people that are riding, it's quite motivating actually.
Yeah. Have any fellow pro riders been curious at all?
A lot of them have, yeah. A lot of questions in the bus, you know, asking, well, how does this work? How does that? Can I make my own course? Can I do Milan San Remo on there? And you know, so I've definitely, you know, one of the first things I talked to the trainer of the team and I said, look, you know, if anybody gets injured, we should have this ready to go. And they're asking me, you know, well, does it feel real? Well, you know, you're in a game, but it is very motivating. It is very social. So yeah, and I still do enjoy using it, and my wife jumps on too every now and again. I mean, she's got a bike set up, and we've got a little fella, and you know, you don't have to leave the house.
Fantastic luck with the rest of the season. I'm sure every single Zwifter will be rooting for you. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks very much.
Top bloke and another married Zwifter. It's becoming a bit of a theme. Now, sticking with racing, and we're going to talk next to Christian Wiedemann, who is the founder of the ZTR or ZTR series of races. And Christian has just got the results of an incredibly fascinating experiment he conducted on himself. Hi, Christian, and welcome.
Thanks a lot for having me on again. It's great to talk to you again.
Okay, so in brief, we're going to talk about the fact that you have spent 2 years riding exclusively on Zwift, and you've done a before and after on a local climb with really interesting results. So let's set the scene and talk to us about the in real life local climb that this experiment is based around.
Well, the Old La Honda climb is actually one of the benchmark climbs in our area that a lot of the local racers use to judge their fitness. It's a great climb because there's very little traffic on it. It's not too long. It's not a super challenging climb. It's probably about between 7 and 8% grade for 3 miles. But that sort of makes it a great way to go out and do a test. And the goal that a lot of people have is to get under 20 minutes for that climb.
Okay. Do you know what the vertical lift is on the climb, Christian?
It's about 1,290 feet.
Okay, so that's about 350 meters. So that's climbing at the rate of something over 1,000 meters VAM, vertical ascent. In meters, and that's a pretty good rate of climb. I think pros, when they're really nailing it, will do 1,400 or 1,500. And what's the nature of the climb? Is it twisty or straight?
It's twisty. It's mostly shady. There are a few hairpins where the pitch goes up to about 15%, but overall, it's a fairly steady climb.
Yeah. And prior to this experiment, which we're going to talk about, what was your best time up there?
So actually, to set the stage, my best time was probably about 20 years ago when I was in my 20s and when I was racing.
Right.
And that was about 21 and a half minutes.
I mean, you're an experienced rider. As you say, you're an ex-racer. You're a pretty fit guy, but you've spent 2 years riding exclusively on Zwift. Now, some people may find that slightly surprising, but obviously you've got terrific reasons for doing so, as lots of Zwifters do. Just outline what those reasons are.
The main reason is that these days I have a family, I have young kids, so I like to save my weekends to spend with family. As a result, what I do is I ride mostly during the weekdays. I think I've had like 3 or 4 weekend rides over the past year and a half. So because of my schedule, if I were to ride out on the road, I'd mostly be riding alone because nobody else has the same schedule. So as a result, Zwift for me is a much more social way of riding. And above all, on Zwift, I get to ride in races, which is a passion of mine. It's something that I didn't think I would be able to do with my family schedule, but it's been really amazing over the past, I guess the racing scene has probably just been about 15 months or so that there's been active racing on Zwift, but it's been a lot of fun and very motivating. And in fact, I've replaced all of my structured training with racing. So I don't actually go out and do interval workouts anymore. My interval workouts are done in an unstructured way in the race setting.
And that's what I think makes this experiment even more interesting. You're in the A group, aren't you, in Zwift races? Again, just to set the scene, you're probably one of the stronger riders on the Zwift racing scene.
I'm just at the border between the A group and the B group.
Okay.
But I'm now certainly, after the year of training, I'm certainly strongly in the A group. I'm too strong to ride in the B group.
Okay. So the conclusion then of this experiment was you managing to get out onto Old La Honda again in real life and, well, tell us what happened.
I mean, it was a very interesting ride because I ride so rarely on the road. It feels very different when I go outside. And the one thing that I notice is how alive the bike feels when you get out on the road. And I do miss that a little on the trainer. But I felt really good going up the climb. Every time I pushed on the pedals, I felt myself surging forward. And in the end, I managed to hold a power that was higher than I had expected. I managed to hold 320 watts. Which for me, at 72 kilograms, sorry, I have to do the calculation, is about, I think it's about 4.2 or 4.3 watts per kilogram.
Yeah.
And I managed to smash my previous time. I managed to climb, to finish the climb in 19 minutes and 38 seconds, which according to Strava is a VAM of 1193.
Wow.
Meters.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good time. And that's beating a record from 20 years ago. Now, did you have any live motivation, which, of course, we're all very familiar with on Zwift, is that, you know, you've always got a wheel to chase and you can see all your numbers. Were you going up against a Strava Live segment or anything like that?
I did have a couple of wheels to chase, but it's not like Zwift where, you're passing somebody probably every 20 seconds or so.
Yeah.
This was, I passed, I think, 2 people or 3 people on the ride up in the 20 minutes. I know the climb well, so I was able to break it up into segments and try to pace myself. Because I felt so good out on the road, I went out way too hard, though. So I did have a spot in the middle where I faded a bit. But I managed to pick it up again towards the top and finish strong.
And how do you set out did you set out thinking I could really nail this? This could be an all-time PB, or was it one of those rides which we all have sometimes when you think, "Good God, I'm going well. I stand a chance of getting a really good PB on this segment."
I had an inkling that I would go well. The big question always is when you're doing a lot of indoor riding, will that translate to outdoors? And I was very gratified to see that it did. I knew that if my Zwift numbers were correct, I was strong enough to beat 20 minutes. So the big question was, does the Zwift fitness transfer over to the outdoor riding? And I was gratified that it did.
Yeah.
In fact, I was stronger, I think, outdoors than I am on Zwift.
And that indeed is what makes this so absolutely fascinating from a physiological point of view, is the translation of indoor to outdoor fitness, about which there is still some skepticism, it has to be said. But this is pretty much proof of concept. So if this was a scientific paper, there'd be a kind of section at the end that said, summary or findings or conclusion or areas for further research. What would you put into that section of the paper?
I think there are 2 big takeaways from this. One is that riding indoors definitely builds a fitness that is useful outdoors, at least in the context of climbing a hill. So if somebody wants to train to climb a hill, Zwift is a great way to do it. And I think the second takeaway for me personally is the fact that I gave up the structured training in exchange for the races. And by doing 2 races in a week in place of my structured intervals, I was able to build fitness. I think I've probably over the past, well, to be fair, I've been on Zwift probably for 18 months. Riding exclusively indoors is probably 2 years.
Yeah.
But over those 2 years, I think I've improved from an FTP of about 270 to 300. Which for somebody who's only training 6 to 8 hours a week is a really good accomplishment.
God, yeah, too right it is. And you know, something I'm conscious of, none of us are getting any younger. So what age are you? Because FTP kind of not inevitably declines, but you know, you're fighting a battle, aren't you, as you age?
Yeah, don't remind me about that. I'm 49, turning 49 this year, so getting on as well.
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic achievement. Has it clearly it's motivated you to carry on Zwifting and carry on racing. Has it motivated you to think that you could go even better outside on Old La Honda?
I think so. I think there's definitely still some gains to be made. My FTP hasn't plateaued yet. I expect that I don't have that much more left in me, but we'll see. And I'm going to continue to training hard, continue my racing program on Zwift to see how far I can take it.
Yeah. So that's two hard races a week. That's presumably Tuesday and Thursday. And then do you do easy recovery rides in between?
I try to do easy recovery rides in between. As everybody knows, it's easy to get caught up and to do too much. Sometimes I do a slightly harder ride on Fridays because I have the whole weekend off to recover. But I try not to overdo it. Yeah.
Well, as I say, Christian, I think it's an absolutely a fascinating experiment with a real kind of verifiable outcome. It's always difficult to kind of generalize from one person's experience, but there are certain rules that apply to all types of training. You know, clearly you would recommend this pattern to anybody who wants to better their kind of all-time PB on a favourite climb.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think the key is maybe not so much the actual structure of the training, what I trained. Races are great because they train all systems. Now, structured workouts may be more efficient, but for somebody like me, motivation is the key. And I have so much fun racing that I've missed very few races when I've been healthy. And, you know, that kind of motivation and getting out on the bike is much more important, I think, than the absolute efficiency of training, unless you're so serious that you're an elite rider or a pro. And, you know, I think it's a testament that I was able to get to this level that I'm racing in the A group at Zwift, which is actually a fairly fast group, just by doing this kind of program.
Great, really fascinating story, Christian. Lovely to have you back again on the podcast. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you in the future. And thank you very much for telling us your story.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
Okay, now Christian's a really bright guy. He knows lots about racing. He knows a fair bit about physiology. He obviously knows an awful lot about his own body, and he knows a lot about this local climb that he's grown up with and done a lot. And those variables are pretty well controlled. So this smacks to me of being a fairly good experiment, a physiological experiment. Do you agree with that, Shane?
Yeah, for sure. I've got a lot to say on this topic, though, so I'll try and keep it short.
Yeah.
We're very good. Look, what that does is, we've seen it with Mat Hayman. He kept fitness with Zwift, but look, it's fitness and not skills for racing. That's the way I see Zwift. FTP, that we always talk about FTP, what's your FTP, develop your FTP. FTP is a measurement of fitness, not your skill set. So for something like going up a hill like that, that's nearly purely watts per kilo. There's no sort of cornering, there's no wind in your hair, there's no inertia of the wheels, changing your steering and speed and grip of the tyres. There's so much more that goes into it. However, for fitness, fantastic. For skill set, you need to get out on the road and race. A lot of us who have that, I guess, the racing fitness or the racing background for probably 10 years before Zwift came along, maybe even more for a lot of us, we never lose that. You go out on the road, it's straight back. But for the beginners, I think Zwift needs to be an accompaniment, not the be-all and end-all for the racing experience. If you want that skill set to be able to go out on the road and safely race your mates.
Yeah, but it is really interesting, isn't it? Because everyone comes to cycling with their own baggage. So, you know, you come to cycling with a whole lot of racing heritage, and that colours the way that you look, I think, probably about other cyclists. It probably colours the way you look at fitness training on Zwift. It probably colours the way you look about how people ride outside. I mean, you know, all of that stuff influences us all the time in how we look at other cyclists, because you know, that's what cyclists do. They're always checking themselves out against other cyclists. I mean, it's just part of being a cyclist, isn't it? But I think the interesting thing, Nathan, is that most people like to go up hills faster. Even if you're an 85, 90 kilo guy, you like to go up hills faster. And that's what Christian was able to achieve after just 2 years on Zwift. And I think that's really interesting. And he did it by abandoning structured training. I mean, I guess you do quite a lot of structured training.
Yeah, I do a lot of structured training, but the way that he has set up his structured training, I mean, he set up structured training actually with 2 races a week. I mean, 2 to 3 intensity rides a week is usually what you're handing to an athlete unless they're at a pretty elite level with a huge amount of base foundation to recover very quickly from their very high intensity. And at certain times during the year, they might be doing more than that, right? But he has kind of set up structured training where I race twice a week and then I recover 3 days a week. It's just they don't have specific intervals. The intervals are thrown at him by other people's efforts, you know, and so other people are essentially throwing intervals at him saying, keep up with me, you know? So,
I mean, what he's basically got there is he's got 2 macro intervals, which are the races themselves. And then within those, he's got a whole series of micro intervals where he's got to chase at 5 watts per kilo to close down a gap or something. So I think for him to say he's abandoned structured training, well, of course, it's basically true, but he is still training in intervals.
Yeah, and I mean, essentially in a Zwift race, you're going for over-unders is what you're doing. I mean, you jump in the pack, but the reality is in the pack on Zwift, you are actually holding more watts per kilogram and a much higher effort, at least if you're racing against people at a similar FTP as you, than you would actually in the pack in real life, that, as far as what I found. I think Shane could probably say that something similar to that too, in his experience, that it is going to be slightly higher, and the consistency on the trainer, you aren't really going to be holding off at any point. You still have to keep that speed in game, and so you know, you essentially are having an over effort followed by an under effort, and that's usually going to be right around FTP with some spikes in there and some letdowns in there when you go into the Sagan tuck. So
yeah. I mean, I think Shane, you know, I had a season on Trainer Road when I was training hard in winter for a very big challenge I was going to do the following summer, and I stuck to my intervals pretty religiously, but I'm kind of good at sticking to intervals. You know, there's nothing I like more than for someone to say to me, there's a pile of sand in one corner of a room, what I'd like you to do is move it to another corner of the room. You know, I'm very kind of task orientated, so I'm very good at sticking to intervals. But having said that, since the advent of Zwift, I've not touched Trainer Road because I find the motivation of competition to be just a whole lot more fun than doing a 4-minute interval at 120% of FTP. And I think also that's what Christian was saying, wasn't it? That it's the motivation of competition that makes training easier. Do you think that is something that is universal in all cyclists?
Yeah, I think, and I'm also a true believer in, I love the interval session. My 5x5s or 8-minute intervals for a time trialist are fantastic. But I think what we all do is we're creatures of habit. We go back to the same things that work all the time and we'll plateau. What these races will allow you to do is throw in an element of randomness, and a lot of the time you'll have what I call a breakthrough workout, where you'll really, really overreach and go as hard, like a lot harder than you've ever gone before, and reach that next level. You'll need to recover correctly for that, but you'll go through a multitude of breakout workouts or breakthrough workouts over a short period of time, and you'll be flying really quick, and you may just stay at that next level. So recover, bring yourself up to the next level. So, and it's all about new stimulus as well. If your legs have been doing the same intervals for years and you try something new like Zwift racing, and that the randomness of that is what a lot of people really do need to break out of those habits. I'm a true believer in what Christian's done, and I think it's worked really well for him. The time he's knocked off is fantastic.
Yeah. No, that's true. And you're absolutely right about that breakthrough element and trying to change the habits that keep you on a plateau. I mean, some of the biggest gains I made in real life cycling was when I joined a club and started riding with guys who were younger, fitter and faster than me. And surprise, surprise, I didn't get any younger, but I did get a bit fitter and a bit faster. And that raises another interesting talking point that came up on the Facebook groups. And it was summarised as, is it ever acceptable to weight dope? In other words, to not put your true weight into Zwift and actually put a lighter weight than you are, which means that you will be represented as going faster in the game than you really are. But the reason that this guy brought it up was to say that he wanted to join group rides with faster riders. So he wasn't doing this to misrepresent himself. He was doing this so that he could keep up with faster riders and, alluding to the point I just made, therefore presumably get fitter. So is it, using those criteria, acceptable to weight dope? Nathan?
Well, there's two sides to that coin. I mean, first of all, is he getting fitter? I mean, if that's really his goal, and he would, I think, be getting fitter slowly no matter what. But would he be getting fitter faster if he was finding a group that he didn't have to weight dope with? Now, if these are his buddies and he wants to ride with these people and there's full transparency about what is going on here, I don't have a problem whatsoever. In the past, I would have said something totally different, actually. When I first got into beta and I was all competitive Zwift head here, wanting to beat everybody, I would have been a lot different opinion. At this point, if there's full transparency between him and the group, cool, right on. Like, you have disclosed that to the other riders that you are with in that group, and everybody's okay with it. I mean, if they're not okay with it, there's not much that they can do. But you've told them that, and you're not out there to whoop on everybody. You're not out there to drop the hammer on all of them. You're there to hang out with them and ride with them. If you're showing up to a race and doing this, it's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's completely and totally unacceptable. So, I mean, in a group ride, right on, transparency, let it be known. And if it's accepted by the group, then that's up to those guys.
Yeah. And I think everyone, or most people, would agree with that point of view, Shane, that Nathan's just espoused there. But the problem is, this becomes a nasty habit, doesn't it? And isn't it just a slippery slope? Once you start thinking, okay, well, I'll just knock 20 kilos off my weight to stay with the group, does it become a nasty habit?
Yeah, I think Nathan nailed it with the transparency side of things. As long as if there's an event running and the event organizer allows for that, sure. But the last thing you'd want to be doing is to be sort of fighting at the pointy end of any grade, I guess, B grade, C grade, A grade race with people who really aren't on the same footing, or they may influence the race differently. If they've sort of, miscalculated that adjustment terribly, they could really influence the race in a negative way. So as long as the event is known and everybody participating in those events knows about that change, sure.
Now, just a little bit of housekeeping, and it might feel a bit incestuous, this, but as listeners know, we are now supported by Zwift, which is great because it means the Zwiftcast can be more regular and more frequent. But whilst we're supported, we're not fettered, and we are free to say what we like, and to, if we feel it's right, to have harsh or even critical words for Zwift. However, one of the consequences of being supported by Zwift is that I've been asked for a 7-day exclusivity window for new episodes of the Zwiftcast. So how that will work is, as soon as the Zwiftcast is ready, it's going to start to be attached to group rides. So if you want to hear the new episode first, you join a group ride and enable the audio on that group ride as provided by Zwift. And people who aren't able or don't want to or can't join those group rides have to wait 7 days to hear a new episode. I readily agreed to that because it just struck me as a good thing to do. It struck me as a nice way of repaying Zwift for the support that they've lent to the podcast, and I figured that 7 days was not an awful long time to wait, and that most people, or many people, would probably do a ride in that intervening period. Shane, was I right to say yes? Is 7 days too long?
No, I think that's about right. It's all about bums on bikes, isn't it? So if that gets people riding their bike to listen to the Zwiftcast and they weren't going to do a session, but they now will, I'm all for it.
Yeah. And also, Nathan, I probably shouldn't say this, but maybe you don't have to ride, but you don't have to do the ride. You could just log on and listen to the audio.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking too. I mean, we're talking about ways that people are getting around things here. Well, you just log in and join a ride and then push the play button. I mean, it's almost easier than trying to find a podcast for me somewhere on iTunes or something. I mean, I've always got Zwift up anyway, so I just open it up and listen. So I don't know. I mean, it seems pretty simple, and it makes a lot of sense to me to. The idea is to get people into Zwift and riding Zwift and on their bikes, like Shane was saying, and so I think it's a great way to enhance the experience. So
yeah, okay, well, good to hear your views on that. And I have to tell listeners that was not in any way rehearsed at all. That's the first time we've spoken about this. Shane, what have you got coming up? You're going to come over to Euroland, are you not?
Look out, there's an exclusive. Absolutely. I've just had some tickets to Eurobike land in my inbox. I thought, let's pull the trigger on that. As we mentioned earlier in the show, the trainer market is huge this year. It's massive. I think it's going to be the number one thing for the show because road bikes, what's happening in road bikes? You got, disc brakes. What's happening in mountain bikes? Actually, Nathan will be the one to answer that one. But there's not a lot happening in that scene, but the trainer space is just huge. So look, I'm going to have to jump on a plane and get over there very shortly. So yeah, look out, follow my journey, and I'm hoping I can bring a lot of content to everyone else because it's not just me going, I'm going to bring everyone else along with me. Yeah,
well, I'm hoping the Zwiftcast will get some kind of backwash benefit of you being at Eurobike, but obviously, you will be, I would imagine, doing plenty of YouTube content from Eurobike.
Oh yeah, that's the main reason why I'm going to head over. YouTube has just been unbelievable for me. It's I've been blogging for years and doing exactly the same with the content in text-based form, but since I've switched the camera on, things have gone crazy. There's just so much interaction going on, which is fantastic, and a lot of people I'm just dishing out sort of general advice that I've known for years or I've put on the blog for years, and people are lapping it up, which is fantastic. It's really sort of I guess justifying why my obsession with bikes was there, and sort of repaying the community.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, Shane, and I'm not just saying this to kind of butter your parsnips. That video on the easy way to remove pedals was just fantastic. I have lost count of how many times I've ripped my knuckles to pieces on the chainring taking pedals off, and I'm a pretty decent home mechanic. So that I urge everybody to look for Shane's video on how to successfully remove pedals whilst not removing skin. It's a really great piece of content. Nathan, your recovery continues, I gather. Things knitting together nicely, are they?
Yeah, I mean, I took a pretty good go at Box Hill today. I can't get outside just yet, but I'm on the trainer doing pretty good efforts and able to go back and forth on the handlebars pretty good. And we spent a little time at the races yesterday, and it had me longing to win a little bit, It had me longing to race. That was a slip of the tongue. Oh, whoops. So I definitely, watching a bunch of my competitors, yesterday was getting a little bit of the fire going again to get back to training. So
yeah, and just remind people where is Beam? How do people find you on Beam?
Oh yeah, so it's Beam Pro / Nathan Guerra. So just beam.pro / Nathan Guerra. If you visit the Twitch channel during any of our live streams, it'll still be there. Yeah. And a link will pop up every 10 minutes in chat actually to point you directly to Beam. Also, if you follow on Twitter, I'll be promoting there constantly. So our Vision TV Productions people have been doing an amazing job with a lot of little teaser vids and stuff with all the races that are coming up. So yeah, make sure to stop in for a race. Sign up for one, even if you're out there in Zwift. They're tons of fun, and you'll probably get highlighted. So
excellent. Yep. Well, thank you very much, boys. Great to talk to you once again, and we'll catch up again very soon. Thanks, guys.